Hey guys, it's Big Mike, and like always, I'd like to thank you for being here today. Today we've got Greg from TraderView, and he is here to talk about how to make your journal work for you. So Greg has this website where he's developed a product that makes your journaling process a lot easier. And that's separate. We're not going to sell you anything in the webinar, but he does have experience from all the people, all the traders that uses this product. He has experience to help you kind of point you in the direction or set you down the path of really putting the right stuff into your journal so that you can get the right stuff back out of it. So some of the topics he's going to talk about today, recording the right info, which I just mentioned, re-experiencing your trades, so you can learn from them or try alternative scenarios, and measuring your performance. Some people think that, well, you just measure by profit and loss, but there's really so many better ways to measure. So many better ways to help you get to that ultimate profit and loss number. Now, I want to say just a couple things. First of all, I have bronchitis right now, so I'm going to do my best to hang in for this webinar and not run out of breath. Second, I'm pretty disappointed by the attendance numbers today. We've only got about 70 or 80 people in the room, which is way less than normal. And I cannot reiterate enough, guys, that if you're the kind of trader that is just looking for a quick fix, you're hopping from one vendor to another that's selling some kind of system or indicators, or you want to shadow somebody in a trading room, or you spend all of your time in methodology threads trying to clone someone else's setup, that process is just not going to work in the long run. You've got to do the work. You've got to record a journal. You've got to put the time in. You have to learn about your own strengths, your own weaknesses. Even if somebody else is successful, and they've already gone through that process. You can't just automatically be successful yourself by trying to mimic what they do. It's not going to work. It has been proven that it does not work. So I beg you to pay attention and try to come out of this webinar at the end. And if you don't have a journal in place, please create one. Whether you do it on Greg's site or not, I don't care. He probably cares, but I don't care. Do it on BMT if you want. Just do it in Excel. Do it on a notepad. Do whatever, but start recording your emotions, your feelings about why you entered a trade. I'm not talking about a spreadsheet that says, here's my entry, here's my exit. You can generate that in your platform. What you need to be tracking is why you did it, so that you can learn from the result. Were you feeling like this trade is going to be the best trade ever? Then write that down and see how that works for you. Get 100 trades in your journal and go back and analyze those types of patterns and see what you learn. And if you really want some of the statistics, and that's where Greg's product comes in, and I'm sure he can show you some screenshots and talk about that. All right, so I'll get off my high horse, and I do want to thank everybody that is here today that is going to try to improve their trading through a journal. So first, let me just say that the recording will be posted sometime tomorrow if you want to go back and review it. As you guys have questions, type them into the questions box, and we'll do our best to get everybody's questions answered here today. All right, guys, give me 1 second, and I will turn things over to Greg, and he'll get started with the presentation. Hang on.
All right. Hey, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. Okay, looks like you can. So I'm Greg Reinecker. I'm the founder of TraderView, as Mike said. Thank you, everyone, for coming. My trading background is mostly in intraday equity trading. I would follow unusual order flow due to news or earnings or something like that. And then I also traded with options for a while, which really appealed to the engineer in me. But as I found, as I'm sure many of you have found, there's a lot more to trading than the sort of mathematical analysis and engineering and whatnot. So with that said, let's jump in. So, I talk to a lot of people about keeping a trading journal, and the number one reason I hear that some people don't keep a journal is it just sounds like a lot of work. And, while that's true, what I'm going to try to do today is give you some tips for getting more out of your trading journal so that whatever work you do have to put into it seems totally justified for you in the end. So the first thing we're going to talk about is recording the right information in your journal. And you know, I read a lot of blog posts that say, this is the way to do your journal, or if you're not recording this and this and this, you're doing it wrong, and all that. And you know, frankly, I don't buy that. What I think is that the only wrong way to keep a journal is not to keep a journal at all. And the reason for that is, you know, as we develop as traders, you know, we've all had losing trades, we've all had our own trading education, and I think we can probably all agree that that trading education has been very expensive. You know, there were a lot of losing trades and such. And, you know, in my mind, the best way to get the value out of those losing trades is to learn as much as we can from them, and also learn as much as we can from our winning trades, equally as important. So I also see a lot of people keeping their journal just purely in Excel and, you know, calculating, you know, amazing statistics. If you know what you're doing in Excel, you can do a lot of amazing stuff there and calculate a lot of great stats. But if you're a discretionary trader or even a system trader that makes some discretionary decisions from time to time, I think keeping your journal is a lot more than just statistics and just analysis. It's also about psychology. It's about why did you get into that trade? How did you feel when you were in it? You know, we've all exited trades too early, right, and watched something go and move another, you know, 5 points after we got out of it. So one way to learn from that trade is, you know, at the point you exited, what were you thinking? Why did you exit at that point? Because later when you're watching and you see it go up 5 points, it'd be useful to be able to go back and say, oh, you know, maybe all these things I was thinking at the time and the information I was gathering together were painting a misleading picture, and here's the other things that I missed, for example. So the first thing we need to get into our journal is our trade executions in some way. And you know, doing this manually is a giant pain. The first trading journal that I did was, hopefully you can see this, was just in a word processor. And you can see it here, and you know, I would make my notes, I would paste in some trade executions, I would paste in the charts that I had for my execution platform. And you know, I found this to be tremendously valuable. The problem is that at the end of every trading day, it would take like an extra hour just to, you know, paste in executions, paste in charts, and I found that I just dreaded doing it. So if you can find a way to import your data automatically in some way, I really encourage you to do that. A lot of trading platforms will let you export to Excel or CSV files or something like that. Platforms like TraderView will import that data. You know, we can import from T4 or NinjaTrader or Lightspeed, or, you know, chances are whatever you're using we can import from. And so it's super important. This is sort of a baseline. Get your actual executions in. And then once you have your executions in, it's worthwhile to think about the difference between an actual execution and what we would think of as a trade. So if you look at this trade and the little, oh, I can't get my mouse over there. So the little green diamonds you see are buy points, and the little red diamonds are sell points. So you can see that this trader was kind of buying at the bottom of a range and selling in the middle of the top of the range, and, you know, sort of building a position, and finally got stopped out. But as we look at this, I would think of this as a single trade. You know, there were, you know, 15 or so different executions in here, but I think of it as a single logical trade. And when I'm thinking about my win-loss percentage and things like that, you know, I'm thinking of this as one win, not, you know, 7 wins, you know, being counted every time I got flat. So it's worth thinking about that as well. And then you'll wind up with a list of trades that you could do something with. And each of these trades will be made up of a set of executions. And you may get flat multiple times in the middle of a trade, or you may start a new trade every time you get flat. It just really depends on your trading strategy and what you're trying to accomplish. But you should definitely think through that. Next, charts are super important to get into your journal. Ideally, for price charts anyway, capture the same time frames and the same studies you're using when you're trading. If you're, you know, buying every time you touch the 9, the EMA 9 on the 5-minute chart or something, make sure you get that EMA 9 on in your journal. And then also plot your execution points on these charts. Super important when you go back later and you're trying to remember what exactly happened in this trade. And those can come on the top right. We see an example of a chart with executions plotted on it. This came right out of Lightspeed. And the one on the bottom is a chart, I believe, from the same trade that's auto-generated from TraderView later. However you get your charts in there, just make sure you can, if you can, plot your executions on there. Super important. Then when you're looking at your trades, there's a lot of different categories or tags or metadata about those trades that you should try to record if you can. So one example is setup. Was I buying this because it was touching support? Was I doing a breakout trade? Was I in this trade because of a moving average crossover? Whatever the setup was, record that, because later you're going to want to go back and say, how am I doing on this particular setup? The source of where you got the idea is really important too. Did you get this from the chat room you hang out in? Did you get it off of the Twitter stream? Did you get it from your research you did last night, from an alert system you used? Whatever that was, put the source in there too. What I found personally, for example, is trade ideas that I pull right off of StockTwits or Twitter without doing a lot of research, and I just jump in and start trading them. I generally do very poorly with those, as opposed to the trades where I thought about it, I did my research, etc. So track that info and you might learn something about your trading. Different conditions, market conditions or what have you, if there was news, if there was earnings, if there was, if the market's doing certain things, definitely record that. What time frame? If you found this on a setup on the 5-minute chart or the 1-minute chart or wherever you found it, record that. Was it within your trading plan, or was it sort of off on a wild hair? You tried something new. Record these things. Your confidence level. Were you super confident going into this trade, or were you kind of hesitant, or were you frustrated? All those sorts of things are great to record, because then you can look at them later and say, you know what? All my A trades that I was super confident in were not performing as well, and that's something that you can think about. The URL I stuck in the bottom of here is from a guy named Grove Under, who has a blog that he keeps his trading journal on, and he uses TraderView, and on the page that I linked to is a list of all the tags that he uses. And I'll just give you some ideas about different ways you can tag your trades, whether you're using TraderView or Excel or whatever you're using. I'll just give you some ideas of things, metadata you can add to your trades and come back to later. Notes, I can't emphasize this enough. These are arguably the most important thing in your journal. You need to make notes in your journal as soon as you make your trade, either while you're in it or after you're done or at the end of the day. Whenever you make your notes, just make sure you get them in there. And talk about things like, your emotional state, right? Were you frustrated? Were you about to head out the door, but you wanted to squeeze this one last trade in, or etc. Any outside factors, market conditions, news, whatever's going on, sort of make notes about those. Any observations you made, like maybe you saw something on the tape when you were making this trade, write it down. Come back to it later. It might prove to be valuable when you're going back over this trade and trying to understand what happened. Market conditions, was the market up? Was it down? Did it look like it was a trend day at the time you made this trade? The tick, the trend, any of these things, risk parameters, how much risk were you putting on this trade? Or arguably, if you have a fixed amount of risk you put on any trade, then was this particular trade outside your normal risk parameters? Maybe you can just capture the outlying risk as opposed to the sort of standard. Whatever you do, though, just make sure you get the stuff in there. And also whether you followed your trading plan. I'm guessing most of us, stray outside our trading plan every now and then. It's good to record that. You'll definitely learn something from that as well. Here's an example of some notes from one particular trade that the notes were just about this trade. And this was a good example. This was a trade that I made personally. I was shorting Visa one day and had a little trouble getting into it, finally got short, covered for $1 or so, and it went on to drop another $7. Okay, so arguably, I mean, the trade was profitable, but I still wouldn't consider it a good trade by any stretch. And one of the notes I made at the end was, I had the tape recorded on video, and I really needed to go through that and understand what happened in the trade and what I was seeing, and look at it again without the stress of actually being in the trade and try to understand what happened. But these kind of notes, if I just have the executions in Excel or something, I wouldn't be able to get back and relive this trade and try to understand it. So it's really important to write some notes. Also make notes on the day as a whole. Maybe you made 10 trades on a certain day. Make notes about the day. How did it go? In this particular case, I noted that the trades I was making from the tape, remember I was an equity trader trading based on order flow off the tape. Most of the trades I made from the tape were winners, and a lot of the ones I made from the charts were losers on this particular day. That lets me go back later and look at that and see if I can gather any patterns or understand a little bit better what was going on that day. And then finally, think about recording video of your trading platform during the day when you're trading. I did this personally for a while, and what I found, it's really expensive. I think it recorded 30 or 40 gigabytes every day of video files, and that takes a while to go through and find the stuff you want to find. And what I found was 90% of the time I never looked at the video again, but every now and then there'd be something unusual that happened, and if I had it on video, it really was a great tool to go back to later and try to learn. So a good example was that Visa trade I was talking about where it dropped, like $8 in one day. Being able to go back to the tape and see that trade again and be able to sort of relive it in simulation was pretty valuable. So it's worth thinking about. So re-experiencing your trades is one of the things you can do with the trading journal that it's pretty much impossible to do any other way. So if you've read One Good Trade by Mike Bellafiore, he talks about the idea of getting in reps as a trader or repetitions. So, probably some of you have read the, I forget what book it was, that talks about it takes 10,000 hours to master something. So if you kind of take that and apply it to trading, it's going to take a lot of hours of trading or a lot of trades to get to the point where you've mastered it in some way. And if you only have, 5 trades a day or 10 trades a day or, 6 hours during the market when it's open that you're actually trading, it's going to take a long time to get to mastery by only having that limited amount of time. But if you can get more out of every one trade, if I can make one trade count as 3 trades, in terms of repetitions and learning, then I really am gaining something. So the idea is you learn more from every trade you make, whether it's a win or a loss. And the way you do that is by reviewing your journal. What I did was I would write my journal during the day, and right after the close, I would review the whole thing once immediately at the end of the day and just go through and read it again. At the end of the week, I would go through the whole week's worth of journals. And then I know some folks that go back at the end of the next week or at the end of the month or whenever. Every single one of those times, if you go through a trade in detail, it's sort of another repetition. It's as if you made another trade, and you can experience that again. So in order to do this, you want to make sure the notes that you wrote in your journal and the charts that you had are sufficient that they can kind of bring you back to where you were when you traded. So bring you back, in terms of what you were thinking, all the information you had available at the time, and so on. And you can look at that, and I can look at an individual trade and say, okay, well, did this trade work? Did it not? Why didn't it? And importantly, were the decisions that I made during this trade the right ones, given the information I had at the time? So I might have a trade that lost. Maybe it stopped out. Maybe it went all the way against my max risk and stopped out. That doesn't necessarily mean it was a bad trade if I made the right decisions along the way. So if you can go through using your journal and actually relive that trade, get back in the mindset that you were in, and sort of relive the trade and think about maybe what you could have done differently, or maybe you did the right things and so on, that's effectively sort of a whole nother rep and you got a whole nother trade out of that. And I can't emphasize this enough, seriously, like take the time, review your journal, it's totally worth it. So different scenarios, this is kind of another way to use your journal to, kind of get more reps in, but at the same time really understand what it's going to take to push the envelope. So for example, try setting a hypothetical goal. Let's say you're a trader and you're making, plus or minus $100 a day or $200 a day, something like that. So set a hypothetical goal. Maybe you'd like to make $1,000 a day, and don't set it to $10,000 a day, because if you're a $200 a day trader, it's just not going to happen, right? But $1,000 a day, that's probably doable, right? So find a goal that makes sense for you that you would like to hit, and then go through your journal and the trades you made with that particular goal in mind. And think about, could you have met that goal that day within the amount of risk you were willing to put on and with the information you had available at the time? So, don't cheat, right? We can all look at trades or charts in arrears and say, well, clearly I should have stayed in this, and I should have let it go against me for those 30 cents because it was about to go up $3. But try to put yourself, again, have enough information in your journal to go back to the point where you were when you made the trade and that same information and sort of relive it, but try and relive it in a way that gets you closer to that goal. Write that down in your journal. I think it's a good exercise to do now and then. Hard to say. Maybe you should do it every day, but maybe you just do it for a week at a time, at 1 week every month or something like that. Here's an example. It's probably going to be a little bit hard to see because the charts are small on this slide. But this is a trade where the as traded P&L was $17. And I think the max risk on this trade was around $25 at entry or something like that. So the position size was around a couple hundred shares. So you can see the dots in the lower right, the green and red dots, were the actual buy and sell points. And you can see that, it made a big move after that. It went up $1.50 after this trader was flat. So, if we walk through a whole other scenario here, so that scenario would be buy 200 at the exact same spot. I actually bought 200. Scale out 100, it dips back down, but it didn't come back down to your stop, so maybe I buy 200 more, scale out another 100, drops back down to the bottom of that range, I buy another 100. All this is a little abstract without really diving into the chart and seeing it all. But the point is that by going through this scenario, which seemed realistic given the information I had, you can put on a maximum amount of risk that was the same as the real risk that was on in the trade. In this case, the max risk was $26. But by having that amount of risk, this scenario's P&L comes up to $363 instead of $17. Now, granted, sadly, that didn't actually happen, but it was a good exercise to understand, what would it take for this trade to really be the kind of winner it had the potential to be, and what did I do, the decisions I made, what decisions could I have made differently to really make a material difference in this trade. If you do this for all of your trades for a given trading week, it may really expand your horizons and get your mind in a different place to what it's going to take to go to that next level. And then finally, obviously with a trading journal, we like to analyze our performance. So the first thing that it's great to take a look at is if you're using categories or that metadata I was talking about or tags, definitely aggregate your data based on those tags and see what you see. So in this case, this is a snapshot from, a week or so, I'm guessing. And you can see, momentum trades, the trades that were tagged with momentum were by far the best ones. The worst ones were ones that were tagged with stream, which was trades that I just pulled off of StockTwits or Twitter, and they looked interesting at the time, so I jumped in. Obviously not a good idea. When I first saw this chart, when I was trading with it, this was sort of an eye-opener because at the time I thought my earnings trades were really working. And as you can see, that's totally not the case. And in fact, the earnings trades were net negative over this period of time. So, I guess my point is, if you use these tags and you organize your trades this way, you might be surprised what you find out, and you might get ideas for new tags to use next week. Look for patterns in your trading, and these patterns could be based on almost anything. Either time or day, what instruments you're trading. Are you over trading? Lots of us have that problem for sure. How long are you staying in the market? Are your longer trades working better than your shorter trades in terms of duration? Look for patterns versus market behavior. If you're, if you do really well on trend days but not so good on range days, that's a good thing to know. It'd be an even better thing to know if it was the opposite and trend days were not working for you. Look at days where you're winning and days when you're losing, or trades when you're winning and trades when you're losing. There's probably differences between those two that you can pick out and say, wow, I did not realize this was actually happening. Long versus short. If you're trading equities, liquidity statistics are very interesting. And you can kind of use that as a proxy for how aggressively are you entering positions or how patient are you being. If we look at time or day, this was also from Grove's blog that I grabbed this screenshot from. And this is some of his analysis that he did based on day of week and hour of day. So you can see in the top right, Mondays, definitely not working for him. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays are fine. On Fridays, it's very interesting, right? He's making many more trades on Fridays than any other day, and it's actually not working. So that's sort of one of those patterns he can be aware of, right? And say, I wonder what's going on Fridays. Why could that be? And he set about to sort of analyze that for himself. Similarly, by hour of day, he started out great in the mornings. Certain hours were not great after that morning session, and the afternoon turned out to be a great time for him. For me personally, it's the opposite. Afternoon's definitely not so good, but it's good to see this data for your own trades, and you'll definitely get some insights that you probably didn't have before. It's great to know what instruments are working for you and which ones are not. When I first saw this chart for my trading, I knew, it seemed like every time I touched the SPY, things would go to heck. And this chart proved it for me, right? That, the SPY clearly is not the right instrument for me, and maybe other ones are. But trading equities, definitely good to look at. If you're trading futures, if you have multiple futures that you trade, probably be an eye-opening sort of analysis for you. Definitely look at, if you have a way to figure out if you're over trading, that's definitely something to look at. Over here on the right, I have a chart broken out by shares traded, and you can see that this trader generally does a lot better when he trades smaller quantities, and it definitely gets worse and worse as he goes to larger and larger quantities. Over on the right is even more interesting. These are winning days versus losing days and the trade distribution, or how many trades were made on those days. And if you look at Tuesday in particular, you can see on losing days there are dramatically more trades being made than on winning days. Clearly there's some over trading going on Tuesday, and those trades are not working out. Definitely something to be aware of as a trader. Market behavior, it's good to pick a proxy for the market. If you're an equity trader, maybe the SPY or the Qs are a good proxy, or the ES or NQ futures. If you're a futures trader, find some proxy for the market that works for you and then plot your performance against that. So on the left, we see when the SPY is moving down, this trader is not doing so well. When the SPY is neutral or moving up, he's definitely doing much better. Or by day type, trend days versus range days over on the right side. In this case, trend down days are definitely not this person's cup of tea, where all the other ones are definitely working okay. So that's, it's worth looking into that more closely. Maybe the next step, if I saw that chart for my trading, would be, well, let me look at those trend down days and, maybe compare my long versus short trades. And if my short trades aren't working either on trend down days, then, maybe I have a real problem. Maybe I should spend some time looking at that. time in trades, definitely a good thing to look at. You know, in this case, we have winning trades, average hold time of 35 minutes, losing trades 24 minutes. I think a lot of traders will actually find the opposite, where losing trades are being held longer than winning trades, which would be generally a bad thing. And in this case, we're looking at a scatter plot of a certain cross-section of trades where we're plotting P&L versus the duration of that trade. And you can kind of get a feel for whether longer trades are generally working or not, and whether I'm cutting my losing trades fast enough, that sorts of things. As far as statistics go, my best advice there is find the stats that matter for you and for your particular trading plan. So average hold time might be one of those things that really makes a difference for your trading, and it's worth really looking into. Favorable and adverse excursions might be one of those things you want to look at depending on your trading plan and depending on the way that you're managing your risk. Win-loss ratio and trade expectation, you know, good things that probably everyone should look at. Whether a win-loss ratio is something that you really want to focus on or not, I don't know. It depends on your trading plan. For P&L, whether you want to look at absolute P&L in dollars or whether you want to look at percentage P&L is worth thinking about. Generally, I would say you'd want to think about that in the context of whether your risk is in percentage of your portfolio versus absolute dollars. And then any statistics related to risk, right? If you are exiting trades, you know, at 1.5 times the max risk you are putting on, you know, that may not be enough, statistically speaking, right? So it's definitely worth thinking about that and looking at statistics based on risk. Hope my voice holds out till the end of this. And then regardless of the statistics you track, try and carve up your data by anything that you can. Winning versus losing trades, definitely a good thing to look at. Winning days and losing days, arguably even better to look at. You know, are you stringing together a huge number of losing trades or winning trades? Definitely worth thinking about. Long versus short or other sort of in-trade indications that you can look at. And those categories and tags, you know, the setup you took or how confident you were in the trade and so on. Those are great things to try to carve up your data by as well and really try and understand what's going on. And then when you find a pattern that you think is relevant, then definitely dive in and look deeper. So with that, I'm going to run through a demo that, that does exactly this, right? So what we want to do, this is an account in TraderView. So what I'd like to do, during a particular period, I was really focused on trading the open, the cash open, the equity open, from the 9 to 10 o'clock hour. So I'd really like to look at that and see, okay, what was the performance like and what can we learn? So the first thing I'm going to do is filter on just intraday trades. And then we're going to go into reports. And I'm going to click on days and times. So we're looking at TraderView now, by the way. But you could probably do this sort of analysis in other tools, like Excel, if you're much more clever in Excel than me. So I can see if I look at my trade distribution by hour, you can see the 9 o'clock hour is when I make the most number of trades. And I can see my performance is okay during that period. I'm going to click on that to drill into those trades and just look at those trades from 9 to 10. And I'm going to go back to reports. Now we're just looking at trades across the whole set we had from 9 to 10 o'clock in the morning. And the thing that jumps out at me first is that I can see I'm making about the same number of trades each day of the week, but my performance on Monday is dramatically better than any other day. So I'd like to understand that, because maybe if I can learn what I'm doing on Mondays, I could apply that to other days as well. So I'll click on Monday, and I'll filter by those. And then we'll flip back. So now we'll flip through some other things and see if there's anything we can learn. So for example, market behavior, I can see, well, you know, it looks like I'm doing pretty good no matter what the market is doing, really. I'm not sure there's anything here that we can really see that's really going to help us out. So we'll skip that tab. Click over to win-loss, and I can see my win-loss ratio is about 60% to 40% winning versus losing. So, okay, that kind of feels okay. And my individual trade expectation is a little over $9. Okay, I'll buy that. But let's click over to liquidity, and we'll see something interesting. So what I see here is performance by entry shares adding liquidity. And for those who might not be familiar with the concept of liquidity, the idea is if I bid for some stock and my order is not immediately marketable, so it sits on the book, that's considered adding liquidity because my order is sitting on the order book. If instead I just jump in and I pay the offer and I get that stock right away, that's considered removing liquidity. So you can imagine removing liquidity would be considered a more aggressive way to enter a position, right now. So in this chart, 0% adding liquidity means I basically removed liquidity for that trade. And you can see the performance is way better for that. But I also see that most of the trades for this chart were that type, right? I was removing liquidity. So it's not clear that this chart's really telling us what we think it's telling us. What we'd really like to see is the average per trade to see if there's a real difference between these different sort of liquidity categories. So let's flip up and do that. We'll look at per trade. And now we can see this average performance by entry shares adding liquidity. The 0% bar is clearly better than the other bars, which means on Mondays, in the 9 o'clock hour, when I'm trading on the open, on those trades where I'm jumping in and I'm paying the offer or I'm hitting the bids to aggressively get into a position, those are the trades that are consistently working. And the trades where I'm sort of trying to be more cagey, right? I'm bidding for stock or I'm offering some out and I'm, being maybe a little too clever for myself. Those trades are the ones that are generally not working as well. So that's an example of a way to look at a pattern. In this case, that the pattern was I was doing quite well on the open and I wanted to understand that. And really drilling down to find out what was really going on. In this case, Mondays were different and aggressively entering positions was sort of the Monday morning strategy that for the stocks that I was trading was working well. And I think everyone will have, of course, their own patterns that they sort of discover in their own trading. I guess my point is, when you discover that pattern, really dive into your data and try and understand if there's some insights you can get from what you're seeing. And my last comment on statistics is be careful with them. We've all seen traders that have, pages and pages of statistics with their win-loss ratios and all these other, super cool statistics that they're calculating. But at the end of the day, watch that P&L. And, clearly that's the number at the end of the day that we definitely want to watch for. And with that, we can open it up for questions.
Hey, Greg. Great job. All right, guys. So I see there's already several questions. And if you have a question, go ahead and type it down. And I want to ask a couple of them real quick as well. I'm curious, within TraderView, I saw that you support tags so that I can tag each trade. Is there a way to, I'm going to put you on the spot here, is there a way to group them together so I could say setup one plus some other kind of tag? Can I group multiple tags together to be able to see the results, or is it only one tag at a time?
No, you can do multiple tags at a time if you want to.
Okay, cool.
So I could do momentum or breakouts.
Okay, and you could do I'm assuming as well?
Yep.
Awesome.
Exactly, we support and or.
That's very cool. Okay, a couple questions from members. Let me take a look here. You mentioned the 10,000 hours to mastery. We got the answer. That was Malcolm Gladwell on Outliers is the book.
Okay.
Okay, so Fernando wants to know, if you support TradeStation or Interactive Brokers within TraderView.
Yep, we support both.
Okay. And do you support Forex and futures or only equities?
We support equities, futures, and options. Unfortunately, we don't support Forex right now. It's a data feed issue.
Okay, but if someone is trading currency futures,
Currency
then
futures are totally okay.
Yeah, okay. So just spot Forex. It's not. Okay. And I see a lot of import questions. So before we get to all those questions on TraderView, I had a quick question for the room. Would everybody type and tell me, if you're keeping a journal right now, tell me, are you keeping it on BMT? Are you keeping it in Excel? Are you using some other product? Or are you not keeping one at all? I kind of like to see what everybody's answer is. Okay, Notepad, Excel, handwritten in a notebook, no journal, the VVHG BMT journal, several of those. Okay, BMT threads, Google Docs, Excel. Okay, and the second question I had for the whole room is what trading platform are most of you guys using in the room? Okay, Ninja. I figured that was going to be the case. Lots of Ninja. We get IB, Sierra, Investor RT, Thinkorswim, Multicharts, T4, MetaTrader. Okay, so Greg, do you support all of those that I've named so far?
So we support all of them except for Multicharts. We actually have the support done. We're just waiting for someone to send us instructions so we can put those on the site. The last one, Investor RT, is not on our list yet, and there was one other one that wasn't on the list that I forgot.
Okay. Yeah, well, Investor RT, I think that they might mean Investor RT is charting only. It doesn't support execution, so maybe they're talking about market delta. I don't know. And T4, gotcha. Someone's asking about T4. You said that you just added CTS support, right?
Yep, T4 is in.
Okay.
Generally, about those, we usually add support for professional trading platforms pretty quickly. The only things we have trouble adding are things like Fidelity, where they just don't, consumer-oriented brokers like that, where they just don't provide enough information for us. But all the professional trading platforms, as long as you can export your executions, then we can build an importer for them.
Right. Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot again. I've used some products in the past where I have tried to import my trade data like out of NinjaTrader, and I mean, that's a great first step, but I don't know if it's a NinjaTrader problem or if it was the program that I was using, but I had to go back and basically I had to spend a lot of time. Like one of the things that you mentioned at the top really caught my attention. You talked about grouping trades together. I do this a lot because pretty much with every single trade that I take, I scale in and I scale out. And with Ninja, I had no way of doing that as far as the trade reporting. So again, put you on the spot here, but is there a way that you're somehow automating that process, or do I still need to go back and like tag every single trade and group it together, or how does that work?
Yeah, we do automate it. We basically have some rules that when we look at a stream of executions, we have some rules that help us decide how we group those together into trades. And by default, things will get grouped together into trades as long as they stay on the same side and as long as the executions occur within an hour. Or, a position remains open. As long as it's open, obviously the next execution will apply to that.
Okay.
Hopefully that made sense.
Is there a way to?
Go ahead.
Is there a way to configure that time limit? Because that I don't know if that would work for everybody or not. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we don't have a way to configure the time limit, but we do have a way for you to completely change the algorithm that we use to group them together. So we can make it so we either aggressively break all your trades apart as much as we can. So basically every time you get flat, we create a new trade. Or the other option is try to group them together as much as we can. So create, aggressively group them,
right?
Or the happy middle ground.
That's cool. Okay, and I mean, for someone that, since Ninja is the most popular platform,
Mhm.
what's the process? At the end of the day, I hit a button in Ninja, export, and then I upload it to your site. Is that basically it?
Yeah, basically inside of Ninja, you go to the account performance, you go to the executions tab, and you export that to Excel. And then once you have your Excel spreadsheet, you just copy from there and you paste it into our box here on the import page on TraderView.
Okay. And guys, if you asked a question a few minutes ago that I didn't already ask, type it again, please, because now we've got a couple hundred people telling me what platform they use and everything, and the questions are far off the screen. So type those again. Okay, and so I noticed that you said a few things that really resonated with me. One of them was video recording. You know, I did this for a while when I was having some trouble, and it really helped me a lot. And what I used was Camtasia Studio. And I let the program record my DOM and my chart, as well as my webcam, which was aimed at my body, head and body, and I could kind of it did like a picture-in-picture. It's part of Camtasia Studio. And I mean, first of all, like you said, it's very expensive. And not just talking about CPU resources, but just time. It takes so much time. But even though I only did it for a short while, a few weeks, I learned a lot. I learned that I was trades that did poorly, net result was poor. You could just see it in my body language, you know, how tense I was. I was leaning over the desk. I wasn't, you know, relaxed with my posture. You could see the way I was managing the order, you know, on the DOM and all kinds of things. It was really eye-opening. So I encourage you, encourage people to do that. So again, I'm gonna put you on the spot. If I have a video, that's not something that I can upload to your site. That's just something I have to store on my side, right?
Yeah, although if you store it online somewhere, of course, you could link to it from your TraderView journal.
Okay, so like the notes section could have a link. Okay, so that would work. You could link to like your own private YouTube channel.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and the second thing was you mentioned something that I thought was really cool, which is you're automatically building a chart. Did I understand correctly that you're plotting a chart like from a data feed service on your side, and you're overlaying the executions? Okay, that's very cool. And
yeah, so if we look at a random trade, you can actually choose the time frames that are on your chart too, and just like flip them around. So this can go, you know, and we'll just sort of regenerate that. And then the executions are all plotted on your charts as well. So you can see these here on the 1 minute. There's like little red and green diamonds there. Those were buy and sell points.
Okay, that's cool. I like that a lot. That saves a lot of time for people having to, you know, record screenshots and upload as attachments. Speaking of which, is there a way for someone to attach a screenshot?
Yes. We actually have an article in Help about that, but you can attach screenshots in the notes.
Okay. I see somebody asking about range bars.
Basically what it involves is you upload it.
Do you have any idea that you might support a range bar in the future? If you don't know what a range bar is, basically it's the difference between, you know, the opening bar price. Let's say it's a 6 range bar. If price moves 6 ticks either up or down from the last bar close, then it'll create a new bar. So it's a set static amount of an incremented price. It's very popular for futures traders on the forum.
Yeah, you know, we don't right now, but I definitely like the idea. We do support some things that are sort of conceptually similar, like Bollinger Bands and such.
Okay. So if people want to see range bar support, that's something that they could email you about, and you could
for sure
maybe add that.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. I got a few questions. One to know, what did I change whenever I reviewed my videos and I learned? Well, that's a long answer, but I can just tell you that. Just how about this? Here's the shortest answer I can give you. I wasn't really truly aware of just how bad my body language was, which ties to just how bad I was handling the trade, you know, emotionally or psychologically or whatever you want to say, stress, whatever words you want to use to describe it. I didn't realize, you know, it really just made me aware. It was an eye-opening experience, and then from that, I started taking little courses of action to improve it. Okay, let's see what are the questions here. What kind of security on your site, for all this data that you're maintaining, is there, what kind of privacy do you implement on the site to make sure that, someone can't see someone else's trades?
Yeah, all your data is totally private, and in terms of policy, you can read the privacy policy. It basically says all your data is your own, and we won't share it with anyone. You do have the option to share a trade if you want to. So we have lots of folks that that do that. So this is this one guy, Chris's trade that he elected to share himself. But in general, all your data is totally private unless you choose to share it with anyone else.
Okay, that's actually very cool. I like the idea of being able to share the trade like that. That's cool.
Yeah. Well, you can get feedback too, right? There, we support comments down here, so you can have like a conversation about a specific trade.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, and related to privacy, we also have a mentor coach feature. So if you have a trading mentor, you can invite them to be able to access your data if you want to.
Okay.
And that basically gives them read-only access to your private trades. So if you have a coach or mentor, it's pretty handy.
That's a great idea. Good job with that. Okay, let's see. I'm skipping the trades that are about me, or I'm sorry, skipping the questions that are about me. Big Math wants to know: is it worthwhile to use such a tool if they're only trading one or two instruments? I mean, I guess that my answer, I don't know what Greg's answer is, but my answer is that yeah, I mean, it doesn't really matter even if you only trade one instrument. If you place any kind of importance on learning about your past, trades and what you did good and what you did poor, then yeah, you still need the journal.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself.
Vance wants to know how long to review your journal, daily or weekly? I don't know that I understand that question. Do you, Greg?
If he's asking how long does it take, what I found is at the end of the day, typically I'd be making maybe 10 or 12 trades a day, which can amount to several hundred executions, but 10 or 12 trades. I found once I actually got my journal done, it would take maybe 20 minutes or so to really kind of give it a good review at the end of the day. And then at the end of the week, maybe 30 to 40 minutes to really review that and try to get something out of it.
Okay. And I haven't spent too much time on your site, so I wondered if you could go back and just show us a couple of those statistic pages that you were going through earlier. Yeah. We saw the win-loss and the percentage. What else are you making available?
So there's the overview data, right, which is stuff you can get almost anywhere, sort of performance by year, by month, and by day. That wasn't really very exciting. It's going to by day. And obviously not a lot of activity in this particular month. And then on the detailed page, I'm just going to rifle through them quickly. A bunch of stats like, average daily gain loss, average volume, number of win-lose scratch trades, average hold time, max consecutive wins and losses. This is kind of cool. If you click show on this for consecutive losses, this was my longest string of losses, and these are the actual trades that make up that string.
That's very cool. I like that. So pretty much everything is clickable. It's like you can drill down just by clicking on all those graphs.
Yeah, exactly. So if I want to look at that, I can just click and I can drill down into there. Total commissions and fees. If you have commissions enabled, you can flip this from gross over to net, and basically all the reports changed over to net data as opposed to gross. Tell you what, the first time I did that was pretty eye-opening.
Right, you're making your broker rich there.
Oh my gosh, tell you what. So we have by symbol, by price, and by volume. For days and times, we have by day a week, hour and day, and duration, sort of multi-day versus intraday. Market behavior, so average performance by market movement, by opening gap, or by day type, essentially trend day, range day, etc.
By the way, I really like that. I thought that was a really great idea that I hadn't seen anywhere else. So you can basically take, like if you're a futures trader, you can basically take, the ES, or if you're equities, you can take the SPY and use that as a proxy. You basically if the SPY is up 5%, then how did your own trades relate to that? Now, is this a day-by-day basis, or can you look at it on a longer time frame?
It's sort of a trade-by-trade basis.
Okay.
So yeah, day by day.
Okay.
Then there's win-loss, which we saw earlier, and then there's the liquidity statistics. And then at a higher level, you can compare your trades for winning versus losing days. And basically, all those different charts that we saw, you can see the difference between days that were winners and days that were losers.
Right.
You can go to the Compare tab, and you can compare literally any two groups of trades. So that sort of low-hanging fruit would be like winning versus losing trades, right? So I can see, well, win-loss ratio isn't really. So here, sort of, winning trades, I made twice as many of those on Mondays than I made losing trades, and so on.
Okay.
That's
or you
awesome. Can compare long versus short, or this month versus last month, or whatever you want to do.
Now, somewhere in there I saw where you had like a classification for a day, whether or not it was range or trend up or trend down. Is that something that I'm having to manually input, or are you somehow computing that automatically?
No, we pull the market data for the SPY, and we calculate this magically.
Okay.
And we have our own definitions, which are on the site for what a trend day really is.
Okay. Great. I see questions.
And then finally, the advanced reports too. We saw some of these,
right?
But sort of looking at, what are some different things we can plot.
Okay, that's great. So if I wanted to, let's say that I categorize my trades as setup 1, setup 2, setup 3. Excuse me. And I'm trading, let's just say, the Euro futures and the ES. I can group them together, so I could see like everything together, but I could also drill down and just look at the ES and just look at setup 1, right?
Yes. So right here, this is how you look at the different tags or the different setups is on this tag report. And then if I wanted to just look at, the ES or like V, for example, I can just filter on V. Now we're only looking at Visa trades that have these particular tags.
Okay. All right, I see a couple of questions.
It's like a filter bar, so you can filter the trades you're looking at for reporting or whatever.
Okay. It looks like the columns are also clickable, so sortable, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. All right, so let's see. I got some questions here. Okay, well, there's a bunch of questions. Let me see which ones we haven't answered. Well, first of all, someone says, is there any discount for BMTers? I guess, are you okay with answering that, or would you rather not?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
No, definitely
I didn't want to, didn't want to say anything if you didn't want it to be part of the webinar or not.
No.
Yeah. So.
No, for sure.
There's a if you
don't know what the link is.
If you guys click on, for all the elite members, click on Elite Access on BMT at the top, and then go down to where it says Special Offers for Elite Members. And I want to remind everybody that there's no referral fees. I'm not getting any kind of compensation for any of these things listed here. But TraderView is on there, and you can get a discount from that. And you offer a free trial also, I think, on your website, right?
We do,
okay.
For sure. Yeah, there's a 7-day free trial, and then there's a discount for the BMT Elite members.
Okay. All right.
Sorry, I'm sure you guys know your way around the site better than I do, but I can't find the link.
Okay, I'm looking here, and it says, do you provide data for indices like the Qs? I think you said that you did, right?
Yes. I mean, no matter what you're trading, we'll pull the price data so we can generate the reports and the price charts.
Right. It was pretty much, yeah, pretty much everything except for spot Forex.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, and then for futures and equities, it's instruments that are traded on U.S. markets only.
Okay. So U.S. exchanges, so like not the FDAX or FESX for European.
Right.
Gotcha.
And the reason for that, it's not because we're snobby. It's just that we don't have the data licensed for other exchanges.
Okay. So the most popular instruments on BMT are going to be like CL, crude oil, ES, Euro USD, gold, and then equities from there. So I guess all those shouldn't be a problem.
Yep.
Okay. How does the platform support complex option positions like spreads or condors?
Basically, we import all the individual legs and we group them together. So if you have, if you have 4 different legs that come in and get grouped into a certain trade, we won't necessarily know or display that that's a condor, but they'll at least be all grouped there together, and you can indicate that it's a condor if you want to.
Okay.
We also group stock and option positions together in cases where it makes sense. So for example, here's a Netflix trade where it was a combination of calls on 2 strikes plus stock. And all that got grouped together. And then down in the price charts, you can see, like right here, the little diamonds, the green and red diamonds, are the points where you actually bought and sold option legs.
Okay, that's very cool. I see a question. Is there a limit to the number of tags that you can save with any one trade?
There's no practical limit.
And to create these tags, do you just like start typing, or do you have to do something special to create them?
No, you click add tags, and then I enter in whatever it really is, and then we'll autocomplete for you.
Okay, so let's say that I've just imported my data from NinjaTrader, then I would basically just need to go back and click on each trade and add a tag, because there's no way.
If you have a bunch of trades, you can multi-select them. So you click that little box.
Oh, okay.
And then you pick whichever ones you want, and then you can say add tag.
Right.
And then you can add a tag to a whole bunch of trades at once.
Right. Yeah.
Sort of like how you do in Gmail.
Gotcha. Yeah, there's just no other way to do it because you can't get that data into NinjaTrader, so it can't be exported, so you have to do it manually.
Yeah. The other handy thing you can do if you import from Ninja is when you actually go to import, you can say you can say add tags to all trades in this import.
Okay.
And then you can put in a tag here as well.
Okay. That's cool. Okay. Do you have any plans to add Spot Forex in the future?
We do. It's one of the most popular requests. The only issue is the data feed. Our feed doesn't include Spot Forex data, and we have to pay more to get it. So that's the only reason it's not in yet.
I have some pretty good contacts. Maybe I can talk to you offline and help you out with that. Okay. I see a question. What if I open a trade with 3 contracts and scaled out at different levels, but I would like to know the number of ticks I made on a 1-contract basis? For example, the first contract I exited at 10 ticks, the second at 15 ticks, and the third at 25 ticks for a total of 50 ticks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Probably the closest thing we would have to report that would be sort of the average percentage gain per contract. We don't actually have a concept of, you made an average of so many ticks per contract in this particular trade. That's a good idea, though. I'll put that on the list.
And speaking of that, how often are you updating?
However, though, do things like.
Are you adding stuff pretty regularly? I mean, if people make suggestions, is that something that you're open to, add?
Totally. Yeah, the site gets updated like multiple times every week.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you have great ideas, shoot them over and, convince me it's a great idea, and chances are it'll get added pretty quickly.
Okay.
Unless we just don't have the data to pull it off or something like that.
All right, so let me ask the room one more time. If there's any question that you asked that I skipped over, type it now. Greg, was there anything else that you wanted to talk about that I didn't give you a chance to?
I don't think so, other than sort of reiterating, right, for the folks that said they weren't keeping journals. I think it's a really easy way to improve your trading, whether you do it in a Word document or you do it in Excel or TraderView. I really encourage you to at least try it. Try it for a couple of weeks. If you don't think you're getting any value out of it, then stop. But, you might find that it's the most amazing, cheapest thing you've ever done that improves your trading.
Yeah, I can't emphasize it enough. I mean, I've spent a couple $1,000s on prizes and given away prizes over the years on BMT just to try to encourage people to journal. We have journaling
Hmm.
contests every now and then, and after all these guys create journals, I usually go back and I'll ask them, what do you think now that you've created a journal? And yeah, I mean, every now and then there's always the guy that says it was a huge waste of time. But I would say 90% or more say that it was a huge eye opener and they've got so much out of it. Um, so I know I kind of went off on a tangent at the beginning of the webinar, but I cannot overemphasize how important it is. If you're not yet a profitable trader, or if you're trying to get more profit out of your trades, then this is where all your time and energy should really be, is spending, understanding those trades and not looking for some new indicator combination. You're going to learn so much more and do so much better if you just look at your behavior. And it's not just behavior like, oh, I thought this trade was going to be excellent, and you can create a tag for that, and then find out that those trades really did poorly. It's not just that. I mean, that's cool, but also the stuff like, hey, Monday on the opens, you're doing terrible, so maybe you don't want to trade that.
Hmm.
So I like the idea about using tags. I saw you using a news tag. So,
Hmm.
maybe, you tag trades around, FOMC or the crude inventory report or, unemployment or whatever, and see how you do around news events. That's a really good idea.
Yeah. Or like earnings for me, right? I would spend a lot of time and effort, doing earnings trades. So really seeing how they perform was eye-opening for me.
Right. Okay, I see a couple last questions here. Was there any limit on how many tags can be filtered at once when viewing the results?
Um, I don't think so. No, I mean, as long as it's not like 600, then I think it should be
Okay.
fine.
All right. Okay. If I'm scaling in and out of futures contracts, can I not track the performance of each leg? So I think
I'm
he's
not sure
saying
I
that
understand the question.
let's say over the course of 10 minutes, he scaled in 3 times, and then over
Hmm.
the course of another 20 minutes, he scaled out 3 times. And maybe that's
Hmm.
considered one trade, but he was looking, is it getting a 90% ratio on his first leg and a 70% ratio on his second leg and a 50% ratio on his third leg? Is there any way to break it down like that?
Oh, I see. What we do in that case is we group them all together, especially if it's buy, then buy, then buy, then sell, then sell, then sell. All that would be grouped together in one trade for all of the analysis. So we don't sort of break it down deeper than the trade level for reporting, if that makes sense.
Okay. So if that's something important, then maybe you send a suggestion to Greg and have a way to, I mean, I still like the idea of grouping it because for me, it is one trade, but I could also see the
Hmm.
advantage that maybe within that grouping, if I could somehow click, like leg one, leg two, leg three,
Right.
that would be cool. So just created a bunch of work for you there, Greg. Okay. How
I would just say
does,
too,
go ahead.
oh, I was just going to say to anyone that wants to shoot over suggestions, that's awesome. Just try to be as descriptive as you can, and that'll just mean a lot more email back and forths. But
Right.
sort
And
of the more descriptive you can be, assuming that I'm dumb and don't know anything, would be perfect. Then I can really understand what you're getting at.
and speaking of which, do you have a contact slide that you want to throw up as we take these last couple questions?
I do. There we go.
Okay. All right, and let's see. How does TraderView compare, or what advantages does it offer over similar web-based journals like StockTicker?
Um, so what I found is before I started TraderView, all I wanted to do was find a TraderView to keep my own journal. So I looked at things like StockTicker, and actually that was pretty much the only one that I found. And what I found was the way that, at least for me in my trading, the way it was laid out and the way the pricing worked, it really wasn't designed for, traders who might do, several thousand executions in a week or something like that. So, it basically became very expensive very fast if you had a lot of trades you wanted to do. So TraderView was kind of designed from the ground up for a very active intraday trader where you're making a lot of trades, and you really want to be able to, you know, get data out of your journal very quickly, and not, not have to pay multiple hundreds of dollars a month just to be able to support the trading volume that you're doing. So, so that's sort of the biggest difference. And then, from there, if you look at reporting and things like that, I think ours is better, of course. I'd encourage you to compare for yourself if you want to.
Rick wants to know, can you show us the detail tab on the right? What does that look like?
Oops. Detailed on the right. Oh.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. Rick, is that what you're talking about? Details in the body. I'm not sure.
So it could be over there.
Rick, you got to tell us where. Okay, and while we're waiting for that, okay, we've already answered the other questions. Okay, he's saying on the screen, on the first screen, detail was on the right. I don't know.
You know what it might have been? Was
okay.
Trade.
There you go. Is that it, Rick? Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Was that it? Okay.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, that's cool. So, and I really do like that share trade option. Now, is there a way I could make it share all my trades just automatically?
Yeah, you can. If you want to, you would use, again, the same sort of Gmail multi-select thing, and then you would just go share trades.
Okay. Cool.
We don't make it so you can sort of auto-magically share every single trade you import, just because we don't want anyone to do it by accident.
Right. Gotcha.
There's some other tools out there, right, that are sort of designed all about sharing your trades and your P&L and bragging about what a genius you are.
Right.
And TraderView is sort of a different philosophy, right? We're sort of, yeah.
Gotcha. Makes a lot of sense. Okay. Any other last-minute questions, guys? I posted to the room just now the direct link. If you're an elite member of BMT, then there's a few partners that, again, I receive absolutely no compensation for these guys, and you need to always do your due diligence before you do business with any of these companies. But if you're an elite member, then you just click on Elite Access on the top of any BMT page, and then you'll scroll down and you'll see a little section that says Elite Partners, and then you'll see the option. You can also get a free trial off of Greg's website. All right, guys. Well, I'm glad that, at the beginning I was disappointed by some of the attendance numbers, because everyone, when they think about, I actually have to do some work in order to be a good trader, they don't come into the webinars. But I see that the attendance did pick up some, so I'm happy for that. And if you guys have any other questions that we didn't get to today, then there's Greg's info on the screen, and you can hit him up on his website, traderview.com. You can also post any questions in the thread, and I'll shoot them over to Greg for some answers. The recording, I'll get it up sometime tomorrow. And I think that's it. Greg, was there anything else?
I don't think so. Just thanks, everyone, for coming out and listening.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Greg. Yeah, sounds good. I'll see everybody on the site. Thanks, guys.